Hello everyone and welcome back to Maritime Innovation Week. I hope you all had a good break and managed to get a cup of tea or a refreshment. Now it's time for our Innovation Exchange. I'm really looking forward to this session. We've got 5 fantastic guest speakers for you. Up next, headed up by Estelle Blanks, who's the Chief Exec at the Innovation SuperNetwork. Estelle's got 20 years experience in economic development and innovation. She's an expert in leading high-profile programs, innovation finance, and building her diverse network, which consists of over 250 partners. Estelle's an advocate for collaboration, diversity, and she's also a non-executive director at Nexus, contributing significantly to the Northeast innovation ecosystem. So I'll leave it to Estelle to introduce the panel members to you one at a time. Estelle, over to you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for the kind introduction, and to you and Joe North and the team at the Port of Tyne for inviting me to chair what I know is going to be a fantastic innovation exchange session, specifically focused on diversity, skills, and innovation. The aim of the session is to put the spotlight on the importance of innovation in taking forward and addressing some of the biggest challenges faced by the maritime industry, such as decarbonisation and digital transformation. Before I go any further, I'd like to say a few words about the Innovation SuperNetwork, if I may. The Innovation SuperNetwork mission is to enable inclusive and sustainable economic growth through innovation, so we transform and increase opportunities and prosperity for businesses and people in general, but in the Northeast specifically. We work very closely with a number of growing clusters in the region, and we are working hard to build capacity for a robust and dynamic investment ecosystem. As Ian said, we work with over 200 partners and 5,000 businesses in the region and nationally to build a collaborative innovation ecosystem, develop innovation clusters, accelerate the development of change and new ideas through a mission and challenge-led program using design thinking, open innovation practices and accelerators, deliver high-profile events such as VentureFest to celebrate and encourage innovation, and last but not least, to attract funding for innovation. By talking to the panelists in advance of this session, it is clear that we all see that in order to truly enable change, our innovation capabilities need to go well beyond the development and commercialization of new ideas. In this session, you will hear about carbon literacy, AI, data strategies, drone usage, and digital twins. But the common themes explored demonstrate the need for a system change approach driven by a diverse group of people, skilled teams, and organizational innovation capabilities. So let me explore briefly some of those common themes. Diversity. Well, unfortunately, and based on the previous sessions during this conference, I don't need to remind you of the lack of diversity in the maritime industry. We've seen some of the statistics around only 20% of the workforce are women, and it is one of the lowest proportion of any sector. So there's a lot of work to do, but also, as we've heard, a lot of work currently underway. There's the obvious problem of lack of diversity in the pipeline of newly trained staff, whether it is in STEM subjects or any other sectors serving the maritime industry. The industry has clearly established in the Maritime 2050 strategy has a clear role to play in changing the male-dominated thinking and perception. We are talking about systemic and long-term changes here, but as we've heard, many things can be done and are being done now, and systemic change is complex, but many things can add up to reach that tipping point. It is our experience at the Innovation SuperNetwork that when you intentionally and purposely address the barriers to diversity, change does happen. This is how, for example, we transformed our network of business investors, which is now between 30 and 40% of female representation, against a national average of around 14%. You've heard how the industry is making careers more attractive to a diverse workforce. And more importantly, we've heard this morning about the importance of cognitive diversity to instigate change through the fantastic presentation of Simon Forshaw. Moving on to sustainability and sustainable values, the maritime industry and supply chains have a huge role to play in contributing to decarbonisation and the race to net zero. The need, but also the potential for clean growth innovation in the sector is big, and yesterday's session at the Port of Tyne showcased some of these projects. The industry is becoming purpose-driven, and this in turn will improve diversity and foster disruptive innovation. The skills profile of the industry is changing and is set to change even more dramatically over the next 10 years. There are many disciplines linked to the industry, and I'm going to look briefly at digital skills and environmental and green economy. The demand for advanced digital skills has risen dramatically over the last few years. 1 in 3 employees in the Northeast region say that their current workforce lacks basic and advanced digital skills. Only 18% of young people are confident that they have the digital skills required by employers today. On top of that, 62% of young males are interested in digital careers against less than 40% young females. So there's a huge job to do to link the current and future skills needs to skills development, and an even greater job to do to ensure that that pool is diverse. The green economy adds in the Northeast around 10,000 jobs a year, and this rate is set to increase. Skills in energy generation, green construction, battery technologies, head network, etc., to name a few, are on the rise. And finally, very importantly, in this session, you will hear about the need for better collaboration with some very concrete examples of how this can be achieved, and also how we can learn across clusters and sectors. So you're now going to hear 4 lightning talks focused on some exciting projects and initiatives, and you will recognize those common themes of this innovation exchange and how they are being addressed innovatively. If everything goes to plan, we will have around 5 minutes after each presentation for questions and answers. So listen attentively and don't hesitate to put your questions in the right place online. So the first speaker will be Dr. Eleni Bougioukou, Innovation Manager for Energy and Sustainability at the Port of Tyne. And Eleni will talk about the Carbon Literacy Toolkit. We'll then hear from Miles Carden, CEO of Falmouth Port. We'll talk about new technologies and future skills. Then we'll hear from Sarah Fear, who is Knowledge Exchange Manager at the University of Plymouth. We'll talk about clean maritime technologies and the changes in skills needs. And finally, Justin Anderson, Director of the Digital Twin Hub and at Connected Places Catapult, will talk about digital twins and cross-sector learning for better collaboration and innovation. So first of all, Eleni, welcome to the stage, and over to you.
Oh. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Estelle, for the great introduction to our lightning talks this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us online. My name is Eleni Bougioukou, and I'm the Innovation Manager for Energy and Sustainability at the Port of Tyne. I lead the port's sustainability-focused innovation and technology activities, and I work together with academia, other partners, cross-sector as well, SMEs, in order to advance the sustainability theme in our sector. So today you're going to hear from me a very interesting and exciting project that we have completed. So first of all, I'll just start with what carbon literacy is. Some of you might not be aware of this theme. So basically what carbon literacy is the awareness of the carbon costs and impacts of everyday activities and our ability and motivation to reduce our emissions in our everyday lives in all aspects of our life, individually, organizationally, and also within the communities. So the Carbon Literacy Trust is a charity which helps organizations raise awareness within their workforce in regards to what carbon is, what climate change is, and to raise the importance of our involvement, each and every one of us, into reducing the emissions in our everyday lives. So in last year's Maritime Innovation Week, we were very happy to announce that our 2050 Maritime 2050 Innovation Hub, in collaboration with Port of Tyne and other international ports, we took the initiative to launch the Port Sectors Toolkit. So the Carbon Literacy Trust works together with sectors, and we identified the gap in our sector. So other sectors such as the rail, the automotive, healthcare had their specific toolkits. So we decided to launch one of our own in order to raise awareness within port workforce in regards to what they can do within their work and day lives. So what we did is we took a different approach to the toolkits that are already existing. So we tried to do a more engaging and interactive way of creating a toolkit. So we created small bite-sized videos where the workforce will be able to attend and complete in series. So this compared to the usual toolkit is a bit different. So the way that the Carbon Literacy Trust by now had the toolkits was a one-day workshop where everyone was participating and they were exchanging views, they were discussing what action plans they can take. So what we basically did is we created a small bite-sized videos which will be completed by employees within the port sector. And then after that, a workshop will follow where everyone will be able to discuss their ideas, their thoughts, and to create an action plan to go forward in order for all of these to be embedded in their everyday lives. So basically what the learning objectives are from this is for everyone to participate, to share the ways in which they believe they can take action within their each specific role. So this will be targeting both office-based colleagues, but also people working within operations, because in regards to skills, we have identified a gap into the fact that most of our colleagues don't know that they can have a huge role in participating within actions in reducing their emissions. So we do believe that everyone has a role, and going forward, we all need to act very quickly in order to be able to accelerate our impact into climate change. So the learning objectives is to deeper understand what climate change is and to reduce our emissions in ports. So everyone, after having completed the Carbon Literacy Toolkit, will be able to create an action plan and have a very clear view of how they can contribute within their work and lives into reducing emissions. Collaboration, of course, is very important. So last year, after launching the Carbon Literacy Toolkit within Maritime Innovation Week, we had an interactive workshop with other ports where everyone shared ideas into which things we need to include within the toolkit. So we took all these ideas and thoughts and we have created our toolkit. So we are able to increase the influence. We are able to take a very big step forward and to contribute into reducing the emissions of our sector. So in the end of this toolkit, everyone, as I said, creates an action plan and they receive certification. So the organizations receive certification. That's in collaboration with the Carbon Literacy Trust. And each and every employee that completes the course is considered as carbon literate. So this is all I had to say. We're very happy to be launching this, and it will be made available early next year to ports. We are starting to use it within our port to understand how big of an impact it will have within our workforce. And we're going to be looking very much forward to hear your thoughts. Thank you. Over to you, Estelle, or...
Yes, thank you, Eleni. Sorry. Thank you very much for this, and what an exciting time to launch the toolkit today. I have a few questions to start with, and hopefully some questions might come in from the audience as well. First of all, concretely, who is the toolkit aimed at? Who would if when we have this conference in a year's time, who would you like to use this, and what are the objectives in terms of that?
Yes, so the toolkit is aimed to, and it's targeting all workforce within ports and the maritime sector. So everyone working within the port sector will be able to complete the training. After completing the training and having the workshop that I mentioned, they will be able to have a deeper understanding of what climate change is and to be able to understand how they can participate. sometimes we see that people think that it's just the organization's role or the government's role to take action, but it's each and every one of us that needs to participate and do as much as they can to do our bit, both within our work and our daily lives, in order to participate into reducing emissions. So it is targeting every single UK and international port. So next year, according to your question, we will be very happy to hear some experiences from other ports that will have completed the toolkit as well. So we aim to raise awareness within the industry in regards to climate change, because it's not only up to sustainability teams within organizations to take action, but it's our responsibility within all our workforce to do that.
Thank you. And in terms of call to action, who do people need to get in touch with to take this forward?
So it will be primarily myself, and I am in touch with the Carbon Literacy Trust in regards to them receiving the toolkit through the trust. So I will be happy to take any emails, and I will be happy to let people know how they can receive the toolkit.
Thank you, Eleni. In the interest of time, and as I can't see any questions in the Q&A session, I will move on to our next speaker, Miles Carden, who is CEO of Falmouth Harbour. Over to you, Miles.
Good morning, all. Thank you, Estelle, for the introduction, and that Eleni as well. So I'm Miles Carden, I'm the Chief Executive of Falmouth Harbour. I'm just going to take you through some of the things we're doing in terms of new tech, and obviously the link to future skills and opportunities for some local people in Cornwall. So just to give you a bit of background, Falmouth Harbour is a very diverse leisure and commercial port in Cornwall and the southwest of England. Some of you may know we pretty much have got all you'd probably expect from a harbour of our type, and super yachts, very large vessels, cruise ships, bunkering of vessels, leisure, and a very significant level of environmental designations and some really exciting and amazing habitats and other things that we've got in the harbour. So they're incredibly diverse, and that obviously requires a very diverse skill set behind the scenes to do that. The realities of a port operation and marine jobs are often a bit like my maintenance team here in the middle of February in a dark, wet day with lots of liquid sunshine. But clearly we need a range of diverse skills, and obviously as we go forward, I'm hoping that the skills around new technology become high value and higher in terms of pay. So although my teams are very experienced in terms of the value of the jobs, that would be good to see those increase for local people and local opportunity. So we're a trust port. A trust port is a very strange organisation if you take that in a good way. We're created by statute, by law, and we're entrusted to look after the harbour and keep it safe while raising revenues to cover the cost of keeping that harbour safe. I actually have responsibility for a very vast harbour, almost 110 square kilometres of ocean and 54 kilometres of coast. So we're a very sort of large wet harbour. We don't actually have any port or berthing operations. I've got, in terms of the economy, I've got a virtually static commercial position in terms of where we are, but my leisure growth is strong. And we've got good opportunities around new technologies, new opportunities around super yachts and other things to look at that, and potential around high environmental designations, particularly around ecosystem services and other decarbonisation activity working. And I'll come on to a bit of that in a second. So we need to diversify. We can't just sit back and wait for business to come to us. But if you look at why Falmouth and why we're unique and why I think we've got a huge hope in terms of new technology, it's broadly around our place on the planet. It's we've got incredible geography that actually no one can. It's always good to have a competitive advantage that no one can actually take from you. And geography is something that no one can really remove from us. So we're based in Cornwall, in Falmouth, in the western approaches of the Atlantic. We are well located, and we have an incredible deep and sheltered harbour, one of the largest, deepest harbours for shelter on the south coast of England and also in the UK. But we've got to create new opportunity for local people and new economic activity locally for ourselves. But the good thing is what's on our doorstep. So our addressable market, if you look at this, is an AIS heat map for shipping on the globe. And as we probably know, the English Channel has significant opportunity. It's one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. So how can we grasp a little bit more of that addressable market and drive that into our port? And a lot of what we do around new technologies and new opportunities around driving new business into our port. And these are the sort of things we're looking at. I know there's been a theme over the last day or so at the event around clearly some opportunities around robotics and autonomous systems, decarbonisation of our operations and shipping, which is clearly of interest, and some other longer term opportunities around future fuels, particularly around bunkering and managing those future fuels, carbon capture through using our habitats and our very large sea area, and that might include things like agriculture, food and fuel. But it's a little bit farther away. But we are starting to look at the future of leisure vessels, offshore renewable energy, and I'll come with some examples of that just to show you what we're doing in the port. So 4 of our main focuses is around offshore renewables, autonomy. That's both in terms of autonomous shipping, but also in terms of its relationship to other autonomous systems like drones and other technologies. Renewables, and I must learn to spell renewables there. My apologies, audience. And decarbonisation as well. So there must learn to spell check my presentation before sending it over. First thing in terms of offshore renewables, we've been working for about 10 years in Falmouth with both Plymouth and Exeter universities around floating offshore wind and other marine renewables. We have a consented site from the Crown Estate in Falmouth Bay, a very unique test site. We've got 10 years worth of weather data, and we're now adapting that facility to look at floating offshore wind called Fab Test. So, and it's pretty unique because we can offer depths of up to 50 metres in a relatively sheltered location in the southwest of England, quite close to an operational port like Falmouth. And again, if we get the pre-commercial testing in our port around floating offshore wind, then we would hope to get those new green jobs locked into local locality. And we're also already dealing with some work with local educational establishments, FENHE, around how we can go around creating those courses to serve that industry. We're also doing some work on, this is actually an Innovate UK, UKRI funded project. We look at Open Skies Core, and that's about drone technology used in a port environment. So we're looking at providing some fairly unique airspace to operate drones shipped to shore, or in a port environment around pollution monitoring, around other factors to look at acting more efficiently or in a better way to actually look at managing harbours, managing shipping in a more sustainable way. Again, the skills and other things attached to that will be quite exciting going forward. I mentioned flow, but in terms of Fab Test, but the opportunity is much wider than the pre-commercial testing. And in a test environment in Falmouth Bay, in terms of floating offshore winds, then the potential for the Celtic Sea, both for the whole of South West England, but also Pembrokeshire and the whole skills base for that, is obviously very significant. Longer term, obviously, as Falmouth and Falmouth Harbour, looking at the offer we have in terms of the maintenance and overhaul of those facilities when they're in use, but also the deployment of the devices that go forward. And again, how can we look at that as a major opportunity, and even beyond the Celtic Sea, the opportunity beyond into the Bay of Biscay and North Brittany and Southern Ireland is considerable. So again, we're incredibly well placed, and that allows us to give opportunity for local people to look at new green jobs within those technologies. And sort of finally, as an example, we're actually working with Sarah and other partners around the country on decarbonisation of our small vessels in port. And we've got an Innovate UK Zeno project where we're going to introduce an electric rib into our vessel fleet next year. But some of the concerns we have are, how do we actually get around maintaining that vessel? How do we actually keep it operational? And there's very few skills in that area. And we're working with Falmouth Marine School to look at those skills going forward. So what does that mean for skills in terms of those markets we're looking at? I mean, it is about us as a trust port. We are have an obligation to look at local skills, develop local people, both my own people in my team, but also wider people. How do we go around those new blue skills? How do we get those skills in place? How do we adapt existing people to enter those industries? We're working with Falmouth Marine School and also the universities locally as well, but particularly marine school around marine electrics, how do we maintain electric vessels, sustainable skills in terms of new sustainable technologies like floating offshore wind, and also fundamentally traditional skills, because it's not only around those new skills. There's a significant dearth of people with abilities to maintain traditional vessels, which are increasingly common in our port rather than diminishing. And also we're looking at how we go around giving that opportunity, and we're looking at the future marine plan for the port, and in particular looking at maybe presenting a on the water sea school, so we can actually provide an environment that's really exciting and inspire young people to get involved with the industry. So we're doing quite a lot. So happy to wrap up and take any questions that are there.
Yeah, Miles. Yes, you are doing quite a lot. Lots of very interesting projects and initiatives you mentioned here. The first point, one of the points you mentioned is around some of the collaborative approaches you have at the moment, whether it's via the Innovate UK projects or with universities and other places. Can you tell us, as a what the kind of lessons learned have been over the years, to in initiating and ensuring that there's a productive outcome from those collaborations, perhaps the positive but also the more challenging aspects of collaboration or collaborative working.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. There's a couple of things. I firstly really welcome some of the support we're getting from Innovate UK, UKRI around this pre-commercial activity. Without that, I think getting traction some of these new technologies into ports like ours just wouldn't happen. So, government support is massively important. We sometimes struggle to even co-match that. So, if we're relatively low levels of match, getting to that work commercially for us getting a return on that match is incredibly difficult. We don't have a significant surplus funds to do that. So really welcome the government support to that, massively important. Those schemes don't always work. Some of the processes behind that are quite difficult sometimes regarding funding bids. I'd welcome actually the process. Innovate UK is excellent. There is a issue around this collaboration. You often form a collaboration on a project at fairly short notice, and then do that at risk, and therefore have to go through a process of quite quick due diligence prior to project start to get that together legally and binding before you can start. And that has its challenges, and we have involved in an involved project that hasn't made that next step. Probably maybe for good reason. It does test the commerciality really well, that level of due diligence required prior to project start. So, but collaboration is important, and of course we can't do a lot of this without our colleagues and friends in academia. And as you say, we work incredibly closely with a number of universities, including Plymouth and University of Exeter, and having a really strong public-private academic partnership with these projects is vitally important, and also vitally important to get the evidence and the data out of the projects so we learn properly from what we are actually doing on the ground. So there's no substitute for really, really strong public-private academic collaboration.
Thank you, Myers. And whilst you were talking here, we've had quite a few questions coming in from the audience, and one that is similar to one I had around how are you plugging the skills gap at the moment through things like perhaps internal upskilling or external recruitment? Can you talk about that in a bit more detail?
Yeah, it is fairly acute. At the moment, we're a fairly small team, so the decision we've made is to work with our local marine school really closely, promote the industry really strong to get people to inspired to get involved in the industry. But a lot of what we do is bringing people up internally. So we're bringing people into our leisure teams and then training them on job when we get the right people with the right aptitude, and then bring them through. And that actually is having some really strong effects around our diversity profile as well. So we're seeing some really good improvements with people coming in the bottom ends and then moving up. Because if you get potentially skills in the marine industry from traditional routes, then the diversity is a huge challenge. So we're working hard on that. It does have its costs. So training costs and the risk of those training costs are significant. But it is a solution. I think a lot of marine businesses are doing that, getting involved in apprenticeships, training people from inside. It's a really good way to do that. But it's not perfect, and it's quite challenging to get people to join us.
Yes, and related to that, some of the things you're trying to train people on are with equipment or technologies that aren't readily available yet. Are you making use of VR and simulation technologies?
Not always. It's not always very practical for us. A lot of our work is, for example, we do it for a lot of training around our pilot boat crew and our pilots, who obviously we run the pilotage service in Falmouth Harbour. A lot of that is on the job training in terms of actual training. We're introducing quite a lot of IT and systems and software to help that in terms of the way we go around the pre-training and the pre-activity around those sort of shipping movements. There's a really excellent facility in the University of Plymouth that we're looking at using in terms of flow technology in the future and mooring designs and flow devices, which I think is really exciting. Our pilots don't generally use simulators. I think to some extent we're quite busy as a port, so that's not needed. But a lot of our training is done off-site, and that has quite a considerable cost to do that, particularly regarding or safety training or particular task training in terms of marine engineering. So that is a problem for us.
Thank you, Miles. I know there are a few more questions, but in the interest of time, perhaps I'm sure you would be happy to follow up offline after the conference. So thank you for that. I'm now going to introduce to the stage Sarah Fear. Sarah is Knowledge Exchange Manager at the University of Plymouth. Over to you, Sarah.
Afternoon, all. Many thanks for inviting me to speak as part of your week of activities. So I wanted to sort of give you an overview on the University of Plymouth, a mixture of our programmes and activities, and therefore, as part of that, where the skills we see are ready for the future and how they feed into adaptations that we're making. So the University of Plymouth, for those that don't know, one of the leading maritime universities specifically, I think certainly within the UK, but I'd also say even broader than that, and certainly recognised for certain skill sets that link directly to marine and ocean science. Moving on, just to feed that into our Marine Institute specifically. So that's a really broad institute covering a whole diverse interdisciplinary mix of research, academia, student-led activities, industry collaborations. But as you can see from the slide here, some of these are what you might call more traditional and are well-founded, and others are more developing and new to the industry and the sector. So within these, for example, the engineering for the marine environment, decarbonisation is certainly playing a part in that currently and moving forward for the future. And under sort of marine biology and ecology and conservation, the recent years plastic pollution has played heavily in adaptations of that, changing from perhaps historically what we looked at and now moving forward what we're looking at. Then moving on, so Miles very kindly spoke highly of the universities in general, but also access to our equipment facilities. I think this is an important piece to let people know. All universities have access on site to specific pieces of kit, whether that be in a lab, whether that be like we have here, the Wave Basin and the Coast Lab, so a physical infrastructure where you can test new technologies, whether it be a high-performance computer that we also have on campus, we have a marine station, we have a fleet of vessels. I think it's important to understand that academic institutions are not just full of academics. We have access to facilities that elsewhere may not have And we work really closely on industry and collaborative partnerships to enable businesses and research students and PhDs and academia to utilise those facilities to look forward at new skills. I think the skills element is key there, because as you can see from here, we've got new equipment and new facilities coming in that are adapting to the changing needs of skills across the sector. So where previously we've had for many years a navigation suite, but we now have a new DP simulator, so a dynamic positioning simulator. And that's a highly technical piece of equipment looking to the future around how you can adapt and model predictive analysis of it could be hull design, but it could also be how that vessel works in certain sea states, how it might work with a different change in infrastructure requirements. So I think that's a development for the future. That I think is important to show that it also means we are teaching and learning and training and upskilling students coming in through that will be the workforce for the future. So identifying new developmental areas that we can only do working in collaboration with industry in the sector, but to identify sector-specific skills where as a higher institution we can say, here's where development for student activity should take place moving forward. So that also comes down to like maritime research areas. I've listed, quite a few of our research areas. Some traditional ones around architectural aspects, navigation, anti-fouling, ocean science, offshore renewables. They've been around for a long time, but developing new research themes which feed through to the sector and feed through to skills, needs and requirements, cybersecurity, environmental intelligence, life cycle analysis, so use of new materials and sustainable materials. We focus as a university heavily around electrification of vessels and electric charging infrastructure, but alternative fuels and alternative propulsion in the broader sense. 10 years ago, universities would have been looking at how do we make diesel performance engines faster, quicker, more efficient, etc. And now we're looking at how can we remove diesel from that system entirely, and what else we're replacing it with in alternative fuels. So that skills, need, demand across the whole sector is paramount. And then just going through some of the more defined topics that we cover, offshore renewable. As I mentioned, offshore renewable wind farms specifically have been in our waters internationally for many, many years now. But actually they are advancing in technology development very quickly. So the Celtic Sea array that's coming on board over coming years will be a floating platform. That floating infrastructure is different to a fixed infrastructure. Are there higher level efficiencies that we can move into how that power and energy is stored, transported and utilised in immediate local areas where it's needed? So offshore renewable energy does pose a significant opportunity moving forward. You can then link that back into all the vessels, the crew transfer vessels and support operational vessels that are needed to support the sector. Realistically, they should all be clean and green vessels. There would be no need for a diesel vessel to go out to service and support these infrastructures. So there's a skills requirement to build and physically build and develop fully clean CTVs and FOVs, for example. Some of the industry collaborative projects that we've worked on, I think also bring out the skills needs moving forward for across the board, really, from primary, secondary schools all the way through college, universities, apprenticeships, and training within industry partners. So we in Plymouth, we specifically looked at, as I mentioned, electric vessels, and we supported local businesses with regard to retrofit of two. So the E-Voyager and the E-Link, they're both full electric systems, completely different systems on board to each other, different businesses used, different batteries, all component parts, etc., proving that the UK has a wide array of businesses developing in this space around alternative technology for alternative propulsion. Princess Yachts, I mentioned life cycle assessment. I think life cycle assessment is important now across the board. If you look backwards, you might look at equality and diversity, how that would be an embedded theme within projects moving forward. I think life cycle assessments and analysis is almost that embedded theme for new technologies and new activity moving forward, and actually is a vast skill set around understanding different materials to build and create new structures in whatever shape or form, and those materials, how they are mined, how they are created, what's their end of life process. So there's a vast array of skill sets around that alone, and then you apply it in a maritime environment. So I think that's really important. We've done supporting Catapult Harbour Masters as well as others around that sort of wider, how do you decarbonise a port? How do you reduce emissions and how do you support infrastructure change? So that can be around electrification, alternative fuels, but it's also around port operations, logistic, just-in-time operations. So it's looking at things maybe from more a data perspective, and how can you analyse data, look at historical trends and predict future trends, and then say how can we adapt this to look at decarbonisation and emissions moving forward. Another mix of industry projects, the Plymouth Marine Charging Living Lab, first installation of electric charging infrastructure. So you can walk around many places and see electric charging infrastructure for vehicles, your privately owned or fleet vehicles. That isn't available at the same scale for the maritime sector, but it's certainly something we've done to try and support and expand on. That skill set of how do you look at this charging infrastructure and marinise it. When you are deploying it in marinised locations, marinas, harbours, etc., what is the differentiation between deploying it there and in a car park in a supermarket, for example? The equipment itself, where it's built, needs to be marinised. So there's a skill set around understanding technology that has been here for a very long period of time, that's efficient and works well. But how do you use that same technology in a marine environment? So it's transferable knowledge and transferable skills, but understanding that context of electrical engineering, but electrical engineering in maritime. So I think there's important to play around there. Another one around alternative propulsion. Worked with Ecomar, a Southwest company or Southern company for the UK, who are developing zero emission powertrains for workboats. Again, proving that the UK has got a vast array of small and medium-sized enterprises. You know, we've got a huge number of SMEs in our activities working in the maritime sector, but they're quick to adapt to say, this is how we can move forward with these new technologies and deploy them. And I think our SMEs are very good at pivoting and understanding where diversification can come from. So there's something that we can look at within that. A couple of other things then. This is a slightly more blue sky thinking research area, but I think it's something for the future that does lead on to skills quite heavily. Virtual bunkering for electric vessels. People also want to know what am I talking about. Personally, I don't know, I'm not an academic, but there are very clever people within universities looking at bidirectional charging of batteries. So this is not for the now, this is for the future. When we have a multitude, a vast fleet of vessels in our waters coming and going that are sat there for significant periods of time, those batteries aboard are an energy source that could be utilised to support immediate local grids, for example. So bi-directional charging of battery and infrastructure is important for the future. So we're also looking at not just the now and deployable, but those skills and requirements for 10, 15, 30, 40, 50 years down the line, which I think are important to apply out. I mentioned the MEL project. The Electric Seaway is a full expansion of that. So electric charging infrastructure along the whole of the south coast of the UK. The university is really keen to play an important part of understanding the environmental impacts of that, which I think are a key aspect. So deploying sensors, gathering data. So there's data analytics, there's digitalization, there's communication of that data to the wider public and the sector to say, this is the positive environmental impact you can have by making the shift and change within the sector to alternative propulsion. And that environmental data and environmental analytics is an important part of future skills needs moving forward. And then just the last project across 2 slides, the Zeno project, which is one of the very fortunate to be involved in one of the ZEBI funded projects, the capital grants through DFT UK Shore via Innovate UK. So this is the deployment of 20 full electric vessels across the sector within the next sort of 18 months or so. And I think it's really important to say that all the decarbonisation that many of our colleagues will have been talking about over the last day and a half and onward into tomorrow as well, a lot of the industry partners are, you can go and buy one of these vessels tomorrow, but I haven't seen one yet. You know, they're a bit like a unicorn. I don't know, does it work? How does it work? I want to have confidence in their ability and their capabilities. So deploying new technologies where people can physically see it, it can be used, is an important part in that sort of mindset shift change. So this project will deploy them across the sector. Just showing here then the vast range of sectors that it will cover and the breadth. So the Environment Agency, a mix of harbour masters, some diving, fishing, ferries, research vessels. So it really does show that end users will be able to utilise these vessels across the broad spectrum. Important, I think, for skills in this is around data analytics. These vessels will be used for 3 years post-deployment. We'll be gathering a huge amount of data on board the vessels, but also about the environmental impacts. And that volume of data is going to be pivotal to look at how do we affect policy change, regulatory change, how do we engage with communities to ensure they understand this is why the change is happening, how can we support new tech development and innovation development. So I think that environmental and data analytic aspect is key. And that's where we see from a research institution perspective a significant step change in skill sets required is around data gathering, data analytics and data communication, whether that be in a visual context, like you might talk about digital twin, whether it be in a more public engagement aspect, but that data is paramount to a huge amount of things that are happening moving forward. So that was my sort of brief overview, trying to take a skills context. And they're just, I should have a last slide with my name and address on, but if it's not there, it doesn't matter. So my email address, sarah.fear@plymouth.ac.uk, easily found on LinkedIn, and happy to discuss with people on any topics should they want to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And again, some very important messages in your presentation, and especially around the role of universities to, you know, it's not just a research institution, but a huge access to facilities and people and skills, and that you provide through some very concrete projects you presented here. We've had a couple of questions from the audience. I will only have time for one, so thank you, because you've given your contact details to take the conversation forward after. But one of the questions is stating that we need to move from a more generic understanding to a more detailed understanding of the skills and the profile of the skills that are needed, and at what point. And that's in relation to a point you made earlier on about the work you're doing around with industry around identification of development areas. Can you elaborate a little bit on that point?
I think, no, that is a really valid point, and we get asked that a lot, I think, from industry, and I think it can only develop through a two-way discussion. So I don't think research institutions at any level, schools, you know, primary, secondary, colleges, universities, you know, training providers, I don't think they can set the scene of here are the skills that are needed for the future. And equally, I don't think industry alone can come back and say, this is what we need. It needs to be joint discussion to enable that pathway to really become clear. I know specifically within the Southwest, under the Maritime UK Southwest cluster group, we are doing a piece of work around skills and skills gaps analysis moving forward. And I'm sure other regions are doing similar things. That will get fed up into a national piece, isn't it? Undoubtedly. But I agree, identifying detailed skill set requirements are important to support career changes, aren't they? And people encourage people into new careers. I think you could overview and say, yes, alternative propulsion in any form, any fuel, any form, that's going to be a growth area. Digitalization is a growth area in any form. And all of the above involves data analytics, data gathering, data visualization in whatever shape or form. So, you know, maths and stats it comes down to at the end of the day. And so I think those, you could say, no matter what you're looking at, that's a skills need. That's not as detailed as perhaps the answer they would like, but there's some things there.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So we are moving on now to our last but not least speaker, Justin Anderson, who is Director of the Digital Twin Hub at Connected Places Catapult. Over to you, Justin.
Good morning. I'm Justin Anderson, and yes, I'm Director at Connected Places Catapult. Maritime sector is obviously one of the main sectors that we focus on. We run many different innovation programs with our partners. We are essentially a government innovation agency. There are two main initiatives that I lead here. One is the Digital Twin Hub, and the other is the National Centre for Cyber-Physical Infrastructure. Both of them are building global ecosystems, and we have members in 82 different countries and 40 sectors. Before I joined the Catapult, I was at KPMG. I was international head of the Technology Centre of Excellence. And one of the challenges that I spent a lot of time thinking about was how you connect different systems together. We've been exploring the complex world that is accelerating towards us at speed in the maritime sector. And there's just an enormous amount of complexity with powerful digital systems and technologies that we're looking at. But a major challenge we face is how do we connect the systems and the organizations together? Today we have loose couplings of systems and organizations. And unless we can really connect these systems, it's going to impede our innovation. And so I'm going to talk about how we are building better connections, connecting organizations and systems in order to create more sustainable value. So I'm going to start by presenting 4 future scenarios just to make my point, and I'm going to simplify the challenge by recognizing 2 critical axes. One is looking at systems, siloed systems or connected systems. The other is looking at leadership, and I'm going to simplify this to business as usual or purpose-led leadership, infusing a motivated workplace and the skills that are required to be able to support that. And I'm also going to pepper a few United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as a simple way of representing sustainable value. The first scenario I'm going to present is looking at business as usual and what happens if we do nothing? What happens if we continue with siloed systems? So there's a real danger here that we find ourselves in heading towards a rather disparate and desperate future, and arguably we see that already. The second slide considers what happens if we are successful in connecting systems and we are able to put in place the frameworks and standards that allow us to create fully connected cyber-physical systems. We will improve our infrastructure, we will innovate, we will ensure that industry advances and we'll have good governance. But there is a danger here that if we don't do it in the right way, that we will lose agency to large technology companies. The third scenario is that we do have purpose-led leadership that is driving us towards achieving many different sustainable development goals. However, if they're not connected, then the reality is that we will find ourselves with lots of inefficiencies. We will find battles that don't necessarily result in the right end result. And it's only by both providing the right kind of leadership for sustainability and ensuring that we have connected systems that we will deliver sustainable value. And a key one here is to recognise that SDG 17 looks at partnerships for the goals, and that is all about ensuring that we have the right ecosystems in place. So what are we doing about this? Well, the Digital Twin Hub was set up as a result of work that came out of Cambridge, the Centre for Digital Built Britain. And we started by building an ecosystem about 5 years ago, focused on the broad world of digital twins. Just a very quick insight into digital twins. The phrase is overused. Very broadly, though, we're looking at digital models, which are virtual representations of the real world. We look at digital shadows, where you have that connection between the model and the system. And then we have the digital twin, which has two-way connection and appropriate autonomy that allows you to start to use that virtual representation to really drive the change. And we have been building codes of practice built on top of principles that ensure that when people are starting to bring together their different systems, they do it in a similar way. We are still not there with the full standards, international standards, that let us connect things together in the most effective way. So we have to start building on principles that people will accept as a way of understanding the purpose that needs to be built into these systems, the trust that needs to be built into these systems, and the functionality. And we have an extensive governance body that sits around the organization. We have lots of different activities and working groups that help us to address some of the challenges here, and taking into account many different incentives and drivers from across the industry. And we've continued to build that out. We now have different working groups looking at different challenge areas. We support all sorts of different projects. Our basic model is a hub and spoke model, but the key to it all is to ensure that we create the connections and spark innovation across our membership, across the world. And as part of this, of course, the leadership of those programs is vital to be able to ensure that you've got the right understanding of this complexity that sits across the whole ecosystem, so that the Department for Transport is able to work with its arm's length bodies with a common vocabulary, that is able to work with its supply chain, so that as we start to scope out requirements and build systems, there's a common understanding across all those different parties. So what we've been doing is taking the insights that we've learned through the programs that we've been running and work with Cranfield as a way of helping to create the right skills that are required with leadership. And we have a new course that we launched just 3 weeks ago, which is a short course for senior leaders to focus on how they need to react and understand the business value and sustainable value that they can create. We also launched the National Cyber Physical Infrastructure very recently, that connects everything we're doing in the world of digital twins to other technologies that sit around that. And the challenge obviously gets more and more complex the more different technologies you bring into this. But the key is for us to be able to find the shared building blocks that different systems need to consider, whether they're technical or socio-technical. And then by bringing these technologies together in a way that allows us to, I see my slides are falling apart a little bit in the background here for some reason, but connect that back into the core infrastructure that sit around us. Those links, as we start to build that up, allow us to be able to create real value and ensure that we can deliver that in all sorts of different types of use cases. One of the programs that we've worked on has specifically focused on climate resilience, and we have built a demonstrator that we're looking to now scale, and it brings together many of the large utility firms to work out how we can ensure that they can work together. And this is incredibly difficult to achieve. Technically, probably that's the easiest bit, but ensuring that you can get UK Power Networks and Anglian Water and BT to agree to share data across their systems, so that the end result of that system of systems that we build out is actually going to be beneficial to all the parties, even if some of the parties are not necessarily always incentivized in the best way. We have to take a systems of systems approach in order to be able to deliver the public good that we have to. Now, we've taken the work that we've done, we have started to work with Cranfield to put this into different types of courses. As I say, the first one has been launched with Cranfield and is supported by deputy directors across the Department for Transport. Up until now, our focus has been working with them in order to be able to move out further, and maritime clearly is an important area for us to work with. I'll stop there, but just focus on the fact that skills in leadership is absolutely vital in order for us to be able to bring together the systems and organizations that we need to drive this transformation and deliver sustainable value. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And again, what a great way to great speech at the last speech of the session really emphasizes the importance of collaboration and system change thinking. Lots of really important messages there. Again, in the interest of time, I will only focus on one question, but you mentioned the importance of leadership, which is key in what you're trying to do here. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the training looks like and what success looks like after that?
I mean, one of the challenges that sit between those that have the skills, the digital skills, and understand what needs to be done to build systems and connect them with different technologies is that the complexity that sits there is often something that's slightly scary to senior leaders that are responsible for putting together the business cases and building out the systems and ultimately scaling up the innovation. And this is the key part. And unless you bring those senior leaders on the journey at an early stage so they feel comfortable with everything that's happening, then you ultimately take innovation and demonstrators to a certain point. You're unable to get them scaled up into the infrastructure. So giving the senior leaders the right type of skills so they understand how to build the requirements for the systems that they need and that their organizations are going to use is vitally important. So our focus is on ensuring they understand how to specify what they want to deliver the value that they're looking to achieve.
Thank you very much. I was asked to conclude this session at 1 o'clock, and it is 1 o'clock. So I would like to thank all of our panel and lightning talk speakers, Eleni, Miles, Sarah, and Justin. Thank you very much for your time this morning, or this afternoon, should I say. And over to you, Ian, for the rest of the conference today. Thank you.